There comes a moment in every life when applause goes silent, the crowd turns away. No one is watching, no one is listening. In that hollow space, you face the truth. Have you been living for their approval or your own awakening? The hardest wars are fought within, where you're forced to admit how much of your worth was built on borrowed eyes, borrowed praise, borrowed dreams. This is not about revenge. This is not about proving them wrong. This is about reclaiming the only thing that was ever truly yours, yourself. If you are tired of performing, tired of seeking, tired of running from the mirror, then stay, because this is the conversation that changes everything. Watch till the end, hit subscribe, and remember, the real change begins now. The hidden cost of living for validation. There's a weight you've been carrying so long, you've forgotten it's even there. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible. But it's there every time you hesitate before speaking your mind, every time you edit yourself to fit into a room you don't even want to be in. That weight, it's not failure. It's not rejection. It's the burden of being seen the way others expect you to be. You tell yourself it's harmless, a little adjustment here, a little compromise there. But over time, those little moments add up. They form a quiet debt, a debt paid in fragments of your peace, your self-respect, your time. And one day, without warning, the bill comes due, the slow erosion of self. It doesn't happen all at once. That's the trap. It's gradual, like water carving stone. At first, it feels good, the nods of approval, the validation, the applause. You think, maybe this is what success feels like. But slowly, you notice the applause doesn't echo the same way anymore, because it's not clapping for you, it's clapping for the mask you put on. Every time you say yes to please them, when your heart whispers no, every time you shrink to avoid being too much, every time you polish your edges to be more palatable, you're trading pieces of yourself for something that will never satisfy. Validation feels like oxygen when you're starving for it, but it's an illusion. The more you breathe it in, the more suffocating it becomes. The prison of approval, here's the hardest truth. The most dangerous prison is not made of bars and locks. It's built from your own fear of being misunderstood. And the key? You're holding it. You've always been holding it. But letting yourself out means risking something terrifying. Not being liked, not being applauded, not being approved. That fear, that subtle, paralyzing fear, has been steering your life far more than you admit. You think you're chasing success, but often you're just running from disapproval. When the mirror stops lying, there comes a night when you look in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, you won't recognize the reflection staring back. Not because you've failed, but because you've succeeded at becoming exactly what they wanted you to be. That moment stings. It burns in the chest. Because deep down, you'll know, I've won their approval, but I've lost myself in the process. And that is the heaviest price of all, the quiet rebellion. But here's the other side of that pain. It's a sign you're ready. Ready to rebel, not loudly, not in anger, but in quiet defiance. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, every time you speak your truth without calculating how it will be received, every time you disappoint someone by staying true to yourself, you're paying off that debt. Piece by piece, the freedom doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in those small, defiant acts of being real, especially when no one's clapping, the real cost and the real reward. So ask yourself, right now, how much of your life has been lived through their eyes? How much longer are you willing to pay a debt you never owed? The applause fades. The approval shifts. But the exhaustion of pretending, that stays with you, until you decide it doesn't. The cost of living for validation is not measured in dollars or status. It's measured in the quiet, aching distance between who you are and who you're pretending to be. And the day you stop paying that price is the day you start living free. No one can hand you that freedom. You have to choose it. You have to be willing to stand in a room, unapplauded, and still feel whole. Because that's when you know you're no longer renting your worth. You own it. The illusion of proving them wrong. There's a particular kind of fire that feels righteous. When they doubted you, mocked you, when they made you feel small, it whispers to you in the quiet hours, I'll show them. And for a while, that whisper feels like power. But here's what no one tells you. That fire, it burns both ways. The more you feed it with your energy, your focus, your life, the more it consumes you from the inside. You think you're building a monument to your success, but you're really building a shrine to your resentment. The trap of spite-fueled success. Let's be honest. It's intoxicating, that image of you standing tall while they watch in regret. It feels like redemption, like justice. But the longer you chase that image, the more you lose sight of yourself. Because now, your progress isn't guided by vision. It's chained to revenge. You're not climbing for your own view. You're climbing just to make sure they can see you at the top. That's not freedom. That's not purpose. That's just another kind of prison. Spite might get you moving, but it will never give you peace. The empty victory. Imagine this. One day, you finally achieve it. The success, the recognition, the numbers, the applause. And for a fleeting moment, you look around, searching for their faces, waiting to see their regret, their shame, their silent applause for your defiance. But then it hits you. They're not watching. They never were. And in that empty silence, you'll realize you spent years building a life for an audience that stopped paying attention long ago. You won the war, but it wasn't even yours to fight. That victory, it tastes hollow because when your worth is tied to their regret, you'll never be free, shifting the fire within. But this isn't where your story ends. This is where it begins. The same fire you used to prove them wrong. You can choose to rebuild it, refine it, reclaim it, not as a weapon, but as a beacon, a fire that warms you, not one that burns for them. Because the real power doesn't come from proving them wrong. It comes from no longer needing to. That's when you move differently. You work for fulfillment, not applause. You grow for evolution, not validation. And ironically, that's when you become unstoppable. The quiet challenge. So here's the question only you can answer. If they stop watching, would you still keep going? If there was no one left to prove wrong, would your work still matter to you? Because the moment your answer becomes, yes, I would keep going for me, that's the moment you win. Truly, quietly, permanently. Not with a shout, but with a calm, certain knowing. The need to prove them wrong is a distraction. The need to stay true to yourself, that's where the real war is. And that's a war worth winning. The power of silent growth. You're so used to being watched, measured, compared. Every step, every win, every failure. As if your worth is only real when someone else is clapping for it. But there comes a point when you get tired. Not from the work itself, but from the noise around it. From the invisible scoreboard. From the exhausting need to be seen. And in that quiet exhaustion, you'll ask yourself a question you've avoided for too long. Who am I becoming when no one is watching? That's where the real work begins. The quiet seasons, growth doesn't always look like a spotlight. Sometimes it looks like showing up on days when no one cares. It looks like learning, failing, adjusting in silence. There are seasons where life pulls you inward, where progress feels invisible, where there's no applause, no recognition, no proof. And it's in those seasons that most people give up, because they've been conditioned to believe that growth without witnesses isn't growth at all. But you're different. You're starting to realize that some of the most powerful transformations happen away from the crowd, in the dark, in the quiet, in the unseen hours where you're forced to face yourself. The sacredness of private victories. Think about this. A tree doesn't ask for applause when it grows its roots. It digs deeper, quietly, persistently, because it knows storms will come. Your silent growth is the same. Every small discipline, every private choice, every unnoticed effort, they're the roots beneath your future. These are victories no one else will ever see. But you will feel them in your strength, in your clarity, in your peace, because growth is not a performance. It's a process of becoming. When the silence hurts, yes, it hurts sometimes. The loneliness of building in silence, the ache of working without recognition, the doubt that creeps in when progress isn't obvious. But here's the truth most won't tell you. If you can endure this silence, you'll emerge with something no applause can give you, inner certainty, a kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need validation, because it's rooted in experience, not approval. You'll stop needing to prove yourself, because you'll know yourself, and that knowing, that's unshakable. The bloom will come. There will be a day when your growth becomes visible, not because you announced it, but because it became undeniable. You won't have to shout. You won't have to convince anyone. Your work, your character, your results, they'll speak in a language louder than words. But by then, you won't even care about the applause, because the real reward was never the recognition. It was who you became in the process, the quiet challenge. So here's where you stand. In a world obsessed with noise, with visibility, with instant validation, can you choose to grow quietly? Can you build when no one is watching? Can you bloom without needing to be seen? Because the power of silent growth is this: it teaches you to belong to yourself. And once you do, no one can take that from you. Keep going, quietly, relentlessly. For you, the mirror is your only competition. You don't even realize when it starts. One glance, one scroll, one quiet, bitter thought. Why am I not there yet? You tell yourself you're just observing, just getting inspired. But deep down, you're bleeding from a wound. You won't admit the wound of constant comparison. It's a slow poison. It doesn't scream, it whispers. You should be further. You should be better. You're already behind. And every time you listen, you lose a piece of yourself. Not because they're ahead, but because you're no longer looking at your own path. The invisible thief. Comparison is a thief with a familiar face. It doesn't break in, you invite it. You scroll through their lives, their wins, their highlights, and somewhere in that silent exchange, you hand over your piece. But here's the truth. You're comparing your behind the scenes to their best moment. Their victories are not your failures. Their timeline is not your deadline. Yet, you keep measuring your worth with a ruler that was never meant for you, and wonder why it feels like you're never enough. The fractured focus. Every moment you spend staring at their lane, you're neglecting your own. It fractures your focus. It dilutes your energy. It pulls you away from the only battle that actually matters. The battle between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. You're not here to outrun them. You're here to outgrow yourself. But you can't do that if you're constantly chasing someone else's shadow. The mirror test. Stop. For a moment, stop running. Stop reaching. Stand still. Look in the mirror. That reflection, that's your only competition. Not the influencer, not the colleague, not the people who seem to have it all together. Just you. Because here's the raw, unfiltered truth. You're the one who knows how many times you gave up too soon. You're the one who knows where you held back. You're the one who knows the gap between your potential and your reality. And that gap, that's the real race. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. But it's honest. The quiet battle. Beating yourself from yesterday isn't about self-criticism. It's about self-respect. It's choosing to rise, inch by inch, not for applause, but because you refuse to let yourself stay small. You don't need to be the best in the world. You need to be the best for your world. And that starts when you stop giving your energy to everyone else's scoreboard. Imagine what would happen if you poured all that focus, all that hunger into building yourself, not for comparison, but for completion. The unseen victory. There will be no medals for this kind of growth. No viral posts, no standing ovations. But one day, quietly, you'll notice it. The way you handle what used to break you, the discipline where there used to be excuses, the peace where there used to be noise. And in that moment, you'll realize the person you kept comparing yourself to never really mattered. It was always you versus you. The mirror was never your enemy. It was your most honest ally, the silent challenge. So, I'll ask you now, can you face that reflection? Not with judgment, but with relentless responsibility. Because every time you choose to compete with yourself, you reclaim your power. And once you own that, comparison loses its grip. It's not about being better than them. It's about being undeniable to yourself. That's where the real victory lives. There's a quiet kind of hunger that no one talks about. It doesn't scream. It whispers. Do they see me? Do they approve? And before you realize it, your worth is no longer in your hands. You're chasing nods, chasing likes, chasing crumbs of validation from people who don't even know your battle. You dress your worth in their opinions. And every time you seek their approval, You teach yourself a dangerous lie that you need it. The addiction to approval, it feels harmless at first. A compliment, a like, a well done. But it builds. Soon, you're not doing things because they matter to you. You're doing them because you're starving for that next hit of approval. You shape-shift to fit expectations. You dim your light to avoid judgment. You inflate your wins to feel enough. But here's the truth you don't want to admit. As long as you're chasing validation, you're never free. You're owned by the crowd, and the crowd is fickle. The turning point, there comes a moment, a quiet, brutal moment, when you get tired of pretending, tired of pleasing, tired of outsourcing your worth to people who don't carry your scars. And in that moment of exhaustion, you face a choice. Keep begging for their approval, or become the source of your own. This is not arrogance. This is self-respect. Because the person who knows what it took for you to stand here is you, not them. Becoming the source. Becoming the source means setting your own standards. It means defining success by how much you've grown, not how much they've noticed. It means asking yourself, did I give my best today? Did I stay true to my values? Am I proud of who I'm becoming even if no one claps? Because when your validation comes from within, you become untouchable. Their silence no longer hurts. Their opinions no longer define you. You stop performing for their applause and start building for your own peace. The unshakable confidence. Confidence is not built on compliments. It's built on keeping the promises you make to yourself. Every time you follow through, even when no one's watching, you deposit into your self-respect. And over time, that becomes a fortress. The opinions still come, but they don't enter. Because your worth is no longer an open door. You've become the source. You've become enough, not because they said so, but because you decided so. The quiet challenge. So now, here's your quiet challenge. Can you validate yourself in the dark? Can you applaud your small victories when no one sees? Can you be proud, not louder, but deeper? Because the day you stop seeking validation is the day you start owning your life. You're not here to collect opinions. You're here to become undeniable. To yourself. That's the real work. That's the real freedom. There is a moment when the noise becomes too much. Not just the noise around you, but the noise within you. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants a piece. But deep down, you can feel it. You're losing yourself in the chaos. You show up. You smile. You play the part. But inside, you're crumbling quietly. Not because you're weak, but because you've been standing on scaffolding that doesn't belong to you. Praises, expectations, obligations. And when that borrowed structure shakes, so do you. The necessary disappearance. Most people think disappearing is defeat. They think stepping back means giving up. But you know better. There comes a time when disappearing is not an escape. It's a return to yourself. When the world pulls you in 100 directions, the bravest thing you can do is pull yourself out. Step away from their eyes, from their noise, from the exhausting need to be seen, to be validated, to be on. Because what you need right now is not applause. It's silence, a silence loud enough to hear your own voice again. The sacred work of rebuilding. Disappearing is not about running away. It's about choosing your battleground. You retreat not out of fear, but to rebuild on your terms. Brick by brick, slow, deliberate, real. You start to notice what's broken. Not the surface cracks others see, but the deep fractures beneath your smile. You realize how much of you was built for them, for approval, for appearance. And so you begin the quiet work. You tear down the pieces that never truly fit. You let go of the scaffolding you leaned on for too long. It hurts, but it frees you, because now every brick you lay is chosen by you. For you, the power in being unseen. There is power in being unseen, in not explaining, in not performing. When you disappear to rebuild, you stop feeding on borrowed worth. You cultivate your own. It's slow, it's thankless, but it's sacred. And when you emerge, you stand on a foundation that no one gave you. and no one can take away. You become your own scaffolding, unshakable, not because they see you, but because you see yourself. The quiet challenge. So here's the quiet challenge I offer you. Can you disappear without fear? Can you retreat into yourself, not to hide, but to heal? Can you endure the discomfort of being unseen long enough to rebuild a self that no longer needs to be seen to stand tall? Remember this: disappearing is not the end of your story. It's the rewriting of it. And when you return, you won't come back needing the world to hold you up. You'll be standing on your own ground, silent, steady, unshaken. There's an emptiness that claps louder than any crowd. You felt it, that hollow applause echoing in your chest, when the likes flood in but mean nothing, when the compliments hit but never reach your bone, because you know the truth. Recognition is not the same as respect. Attention is not the same as impact. And somewhere along the way, you started chasing the wrong thing. The noise feeds the ego, but starves the soul. The world has trained you to believe that if no one's watching, it doesn't count. That if it's not shared, it's not valuable. That your worth rises and falls with every ping, every view, every fleeting moment of attention. But here's the quiet tragedy. The more you feed the need to be seen, the more invisible you become to yourself. You start living for the next post, the next reaction, the next crumb of approval. And in doing so, you trade depth for reach, substance for sparkle. But you feel it, don't you? That haunting question, will any of this matter when the noise fades? The weight of legacy. Legacy is different. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention. It builds slowly, silently in the dark. It's the work you do when no one's watching, the standard you hold when no one's applauding, the truth you stand for, even when it costs you popularity. Legacy is not measured in likes. It's measured in the lives you touch, the values you embody, the invisible fingerprints you leave on the world long after you're gone. It's heavier, it's harder, but it's real. And unlike attention, it can't be taken from you. From shallow noise to deep resonance, ask yourself, are you building a reputation, or are you building a foundation? One can vanish with a rumor. The other stands through storm. Reputation is what they think of you today. Legacy is what remains when you're no longer around to explain yourself. This shift from chasing noise to cultivating resonance requires sacrifice. It means saying no to quick applause. It means choosing meaningful over viral. It means being willing to be overlooked in the short term for the sake of something timeless. But in that silence, you'll find a power you never had before, the quiet challenge. So I ask you, what are you really building? A moment or a monument? Can you stand firm when the world looks away? Can you choose to plant roots instead of chasing fleeting winds? Because legacy is not given. It's carved with patience, with principle, with relentless integrity when no one is clapping. And when you choose that path, you'll discover a truth louder than any crowd. The work you do for legacy echoes far beyond the reach of likes. There is a silence that feels heavier than rejection. It's the silence of waiting, waiting for them to see you, to approve of you, to finally acknowledge the effort you've poured into becoming who you are. But they don't. Or if they do, it never feels enough. And so you twist yourself again, smaller, louder, shinier, hoping this time you'll be worthy. But let me ask you something, and listen carefully now. When did you hand them the keys to your peace? The unseen chains. Needing their validation is a quiet kind of slavery. It sneaks up on you. One compliment here, one like there, until their opinions become the mirror you check before you can recognize your own face. You tell yourself it's harmless, that it's human nature to want approval. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being a want and became a need. And needs, they chain you. Every glance, every whisper, every ignored message starts to shape your self-worth. You shrink when they ignore you. You inflate when they notice. Like a puppet tied to the strings of people who are just as lost as you once were. The moment you outgrow them. But there comes a moment, and it doesn't come with fireworks or fanfare, when you feel tired, tired of performing, tired of bending, tired of wondering if you're enough. And in that sacred exhaustion, something shifts. You realize the applause was never real currency. You realize their approval never filled the hole. It only distracted you from healing it yourself. And so quietly, without anger, without pride, you begin to let go. You stop checking who's watching. You stop translating their silence into self-criticism. You stop needing them, not because you hate them, not because you think you're better, but because you have finally remembered how to be with yourself, becoming untouchable. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't come from winning arguments or proving your worth to those who doubted you. Freedom is the moment you no longer flinch when they overlook you. It's the power of walking your path without constantly looking sideways to see who's clapping. You become untouchable, not because you built walls, but because you've built roots. Their opinions become background noise, not insults, not praise, just noise. And in that quiet, you meet a version of yourself who never needed them in the first place. The quiet challenge. So now the mirror turns to you. Can you stand in that silence without craving their applause? Can you look at your own reflection and say, I see you, that's enough, because this is the final freedom, not being above them, not being beneath them, but simply being with yourself. That is where your real life begins.